we are live, so that's great. So welcome anyone who's joining us today from the streams page. We're doing a live stream featuring Bekkie Graham, who has an exhibition that's going to be traveling around the country, we hope, on outcomes for home educated kids. And we're also going to be joined by Chloe Newby, who was home educated, and my own daughter Jemma, who was home educated, and they're going to talk a little bit about their own outcomes and what success looks like to them. So you can have a think about that while we get going. So for those of you who don't know, Streams, a website, is specifically for home educators. It is to encourage and equip and connect home educators. The website itself has loads of stories from different home educators, so you can go and read about different people, what they've done, what's worked for them, good things they had to overcome. And then you can actually also go and read reviews of resources for home educators. So if you want a bit of help and advice on resources that are out there, the website has a review section. And the beauty of the website is you can actually submit your own review and your own story if you want to share those as well. We also have regular webinars like this one, so just to really encourage home educators and equip them on their journey. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to start off by just chatting to Bekkie about her exhibition. So just hang on a sec while I spotlight her, and I will spotlight myself as well. And let's hope that that's going to show on the screen as having both of us. Yeah. And then we will come back to Jemma and Chloe a little later on to chat with them. So Bekkie, this exhibition, I know you've got a long story about the inspiration for it, but have you got a short story about the inspiration?
I got a short story. You've been in too many webinars with me, Julia.
Well, I think what I should say is that you actually have done quite a few other video presentations, and these are accessible for anyone who wants to go and watch the full unabridged version. Yes. We don't have as much time today, so thanks, Bekkie. Just whatever you can sum up for us.
So basically, my project as a whole is called Unschooled Heuristic Study, and it is combined of 4 different individual projects. And the one that we're talking about today is Heuristic Outcomes, that was at the Houses of Parliament. And it is not quite about the outcomes. It's more about what individuals see success as and how they see their journeys and how success changes. So it's focused on, there's about 65 people in the project at the moment, but it's still ongoing. So 65 adults who were home educated as children, showing what they've gone on to do as adults.
Well, it's amazing, 65 people. And it is about the spectrum, isn't it? Just, so just like kids going through school, some will be highly successful, some will find a day job that keeps them happy until they can go on holiday. So it's a little bit, there's a whole spectrum of what success looks like for different people. And, often people think home educated kids are just so very different and so disadvantaged. And hopefully this exhibition perhaps dispels that myth, but also just puts it in perspective, makes it real. This is real life, real people. This is what really happens.
I think that's so it's one of the things that I started saying to people when I was talking to potential participants, because I was doing a Zoom with them beforehand, is don't take this the wrong way and let me finish my sentence before you judge me, kind of thing. But it was actually what I'm kind of trying to show is just that it's just a little bit boring. Not boring, obviously it's not. The stories are absolutely amazing, but the outcomes, yes, there are the person that went on to go and be like an astrophysicist or something, there are those, I don't want to say odd, but I can't think of the word for it at the moment, those odd
exceptional.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I mean. But there are also people, like you've said, and like we'd always said to our kids, that I was equally as happy if they decided to go and get a part-time job. We live in Cornwall, so lots of surfing. If they got a part-time job and they were surfing and just working to give them enough time to be able to have lots of free time, basically, or if they're off at university or working for somebody else or for themselves, whatever. And that's what it's about. It's about showing all those different paths that people take, and also the different ways that they kind of took those paths as well. Because I think when you're in school, it's quite a linear ABC, whereas when you're home ed, you can sometimes jump around on your path a lot to get to where you want to go, basically.
Yeah, and it's kind of like there's nothing to see here, really, I would say. Nothing to see here. Yeah. Just ordinary people, just aspiring, because our theme this month for Streams is Aspire. And I'm sure every young person, whether they're home educated or not, has aspirations. And for some people, they realize those aspirations and more, and others, oh, well, I suppose this is life. And, but it's kind of finding what works for you and what you can live with yourself with, really. So, you had your amazing exhibition at the House of Lords, and I was fortunate to be at the launch of that. Now, quickly, just tell us how you managed to pull this off, because it's not every person that gets to exhibit in the House of Lords.
Okay, so basically it's the short condensed version of this was I had started a dialogue with my MP, Steve Double, in Newton Austell, and we had been discussing home education, the Education Select Committee inquiry, and then I had been on the Houses of Parliament website and saw that they had spaces that you could use for exhibitions, and they've got kind of a protocol for how they do it, and basically you have to be sponsored by an MP. When I say sponsored, that doesn't mean financially, it means like as they kind of...
They back you.
Yeah, like because a guarantor kind of this person's okay, their work is okay, it's all good kind of thing. And so I went to my MP, Steve Double, who was absolutely amazing. And basically I put in a proposal for an exhibition and he then sponsored it. And we waited about 4 months, I think it was, to hear back from them. And just like some kind of weird universe kismet, it happened to fall whilst the school's bill was on. So that was kind of convenient. So it ended up where it is. So you've got the Houses of Parliament, like the House of Commons and Lords is underneath, and then all of the select committee meeting rooms and the offices for the Lords are all upstairs. So it's kind of this central waiting hall where they all have to go through to get to anywhere, basically. So a really, really busy area if you're an MP or a Lord.
Yes, I know when I was there, I saw them all coming and going, whizzing through. And, there were some that were able to stop and take a look. And one of the things I really liked about your exhibition is that you had the little MP3 players where people could put on the headphones and actually hear that young person share their story.
I think the MP3 player in the interviews, they were interviews, but in a very loose, like we're chatting kind of way. So the MP3 players and the audio was really important for me because, so from when I started, so this all started with my master's degree in 2019 when I started doing these projects, and very quickly, very early on, it became really apparent to me that actually I needed to be more of the kind of, I've lost all my words today, but like the person that kind of just helped people get their voices out there, as opposed to it being my voice. It was more about the participants' voices. Yeah. So that's why I do the audio interviews and sound with the photographs for all of my projects now, is that actually it was more important that you got to hear the participant talking. So each of the photographs comes with an audio interview that's between 5 and kind of 20 minutes long. So it was never that somebody was going to be able to sit and listen to all of them, but could pick and choose who they wanted to listen to, what story kind of resonated with them, that kind of thing.
Yes, and I think particularly because you couldn't be there like all the time telling every single person what was going on. So they could actually just quickly, they could listen and get some idea.
Yeah. Definitely wasn't going to be there that week in Parliament, was I, for the whole thing? That was
so very exciting week that was.
It was a strange week, I'll say that much. It was, very, very busy. So I think that kind of, it went in our favour. And there's that thing, isn't there, with like in advertising where they say that somebody has to see your advert. I don't know how many times it is. There's actually research into this and I don't know what it is, but say it's like 3 times or 4 times they have to see your advert before it actually goes into like their brain properly, and it's kind of stored in their subconscious. So I'm kind of thinking hopefully that's what happened with the project, is that all of these MPs and lords and staff, they were walking backwards and forwards, and even when they were insanely busy on those like crazy couple of days, they were constantly walking past these people, and you know, they were just being gently absorbed. And
well, I think it was really well done for approaching your MP and building up that relationship with him. I think that was just a really key for this, because you know, and he was able to stand there and make a speech and really you know, just give the credit to you, which I think was fantastic. So I think that was amazing. And I think it just, you know, I know some MPs are very difficult to get through to, but, you know, try and persevere. And if you've got an MP that shows a bit of interest, think of how you can cultivate that relationship, because, you know, yours is just a really great example. Now, what I wanted, could you perhaps tell us just a few of the stories of the kinds of people? So like you've got the spectrum, you've got, I know there's a shepherdess and there's artists and all sorts. So perhaps just,
we all love the shepherdess story.
Yes, we do, because that's just really, really different. And I think the beauty of home education actually is that you can explore different paths. You have, like I always say, you give your children the gift of time to actually just go and try things out, which if they were in school on a set path, the only opportunity they would have to start exploring for themselves is once they're actually completed either their GCSEs or A levels. They wouldn't have that time. But anyway, run us through a few of the stories.
So I think if you're on a phone, you're never going to be able to see this, but it's helping me anyway. So this is the catalogue of works that was in the Houses of Parliament. So, okay, let's start off at the top with Gala then, because I think everybody loves Gala's story, and I use it as like a really clear example. And I don't want to say unfortunately, but unfortunately she went to Oxford University, and then people, as soon as they hear that, think, oh, I really value the academics more than other things, and that isn't what it's about. So in Parliament, everything was set up to very gently and politely and respectfully try and show people their biases and their prejudices and their kind of preconceived ideas. And Gala is the perfect example of being able to show that in a language that the MPs and the Lords were going to understand really quickly and clearly. So Gala is at Oxford University. She's studying fine art, and so underneath each of the images I had kind of the name of the person, their age, whereabouts in the country they were, what they were currently doing, and then any academic qualifications. So Gala came out, she was at school for a little bit when she was younger. She was totally mute until she was 5 years old, I think it was. She came out of school, she said that she was struggling. Her parents were finding that she wasn't very happy. She came out, and her education was pretty much totally autonomous, where she could follow her own paths. Definitely her dad, but I think both of her parents were very artistic as well, and so she had that kind of open to her to be able to investigate herself. She didn't do any qualifications until she went to college to go and do a level, can't remember if she went straight on to level 3 or if she did level 2 in art and design at college, and she did English and maths alongside it. So Gala's a really clear example of how somebody can kind of be outside the realms of normal in academics, basically, is that she went to Oxford University with only 2 GCSEs, and most people that would look at that would think, well, how can you do that kind of thing? So I always kind of start off with her when I'm talking to people, because it's quite easy to show a difference between what you're told at school and what you're encouraged to do or encouraged on your path in home ed. So my son, my second eldest, is at school, and one of the first things he was told when he went back in sixth form was, it's going to be really hard to get into an Oxbridge with only 5 or 6 GCSEs. Whereas here you've got somebody that's only got 2 that's going. So second of all, let's go. Okay, so you mentioned Lydia, so let's go for Lydia then. So Lydia is in Cumbria, and she's working as a chef. So I absolutely adore Lydia's interview. She's just such a happy person. Oh, every time I talk about Lydia, I want to cry, honestly. It's just like, if you could, as a parent, if you could listen to your child talking when they are an adult about what their life was like and what their life is now and what home education has given them, that is what I think as parents a lot of us aspire to, all of us aspire to, is that, oh, I've got aspirations in there. There you go. That was good, wasn't it? That was totally accidental.
Well done.
Yeah, that was good. Is to hear somebody who is genuinely just so both happy and content with their life and their life choices. I'm sorry, my cat's just jumped up on me. So Lydia talks about how she was, so her home education, her reasons for being home educated, and then she went into college to go and do, sorry, doing that, there's cat fur floating everywhere now, to go and do both horticulture and then agriculture at level 2. And they wanted her to do her English and maths alongside, so she ended up doing functional skills in one and GCSEs in the other. I can't remember which way around it was, sorry. And so during the pandemic, so she had been working as a shepherdess and working on farms for a couple of years anyway, and then during the pandemic, the way that she describes it, which is just absolutely beautiful in her interview, is that the pandemic hit and the world basically just totally shut down. Everybody was inside, and at a time where everybody else was like really, really quiet, she was the busiest that she had ever been, and she absolutely loved it. As she said, like, you know, she was out kind of doing her shepherdess thing, and like it was just this kind of beautiful outside, peaceful. Obviously she's outside on her, you know, on her own with the animals. She doesn't need to wear a mask or anything. And I think for her it was just this kind of this, I don't want to say break from everything else, but this break from everything that was going on in life, I think, as well with the pandemic. And so even though she didn't achieve the needed or required levels in the GCSEs and functional skills to continue on to level 3, her tutors on the level 3 course still wanted her to carry on at college. Despite that, they were willing to kind of make an exception for her because they wanted her to continue. But as she said, she was going to college to get the skills that she was already accumulating on her own. She was already working, doing the job that she wanted to do. And that's kind of, she is on her path to what she wants to do, is be totally self-sufficient, have some land, have some animals. Best part of her interview is where she says she doesn't see the point in going to a shop to buy food when you can just buy it yourself. I was like, well, actually, that's kind of a really valid point, isn't it? So that's Lydia. And then if I jump to, let's say, I'll show you Daniel's one. So this is Daniel up here. So Daniel's image is the only photograph in the exhibition that I didn't take. It was kindly donated to me by his fiancée Camilla to use. So Daniel is living in, I think it's pronounced Siwa, in the middle of the Sahara Desert, or in the middle of the desert in Egypt, and so hence why I didn't take his photograph. And so he lives in the middle of this oasis, and they run, him and his fiancée Camilla and their family run world schooling retreats. So Daniel's had this amazingly interesting life. So he went to university, he went to Goldsmiths, he worked for Saatchi and Saatchi, he was working for Alexander McQueen when Alexander McQueen committed suicide. He's had all these amazing like periods of his life, and then he met Camilla and decided to move to the desert and set up these world schooling retreats, and they're now there farming dates and aloe and home educating their 3 children that they've got there. And it's just this really beautiful story of how actually you can be totally engrossed in this one way of life and this one way of living, but actually I think it's one of the beauties of home ed is that you know that at any point it's okay to just change your mind and go and do something else. And it's something that we've kind of always talked to our kids about, is that I know obviously, yes, we have to have jobs, we have to make money, that kind of thing, but I would hate for my kids to be stuck in a job that they didn't like, that wasn't it's one thing if you don't like your job and it's getting you somewhere, like you're saving for a house or you want to go traveling, or that's different, isn't it? But just to be living and working in something that you don't enjoy, like for me, one of my biggest aspirations for the kids was that they were going to do something that they loved, that they woke up every morning getting joy from, basically. And that's one of the big things with these, I say kids, but they're not kids, but I just do that automatically, is that they have joy. And
and I think for a lot of them, things didn't quite go as they planned. You know, there were things, there were some that had to go quite a roundabout route to get to where they are now.
To be fair, most of them went a roundabout route. Most of them, it was not a direct thing. I think there's lots of them in the project that talk about their special educational needs and how kind of that affects their day-to-day living and kind of what their idea of success is. There's again, I kept going to say kids. I don't know why I keep doing
young
that.
People.
Participants. No, some of them are older than me that are in there. I don't know why I do, because I think I keep going back to when they were home educated. So people that came out of school in kind of quite hard circumstances, people that have been in and out of school that kept trying it, like Elias, I know, tried a few different types of schools. He's very academic. He wanted to be kind of in that environment, but it just wasn't suitable for him and the level that he was working at. People that have struggled with mental health problems. And also, not that this is in any way a bad thing or anything like that, but I think also as well that these stories are not, I didn't cherry pick these stories. I took every single person that participated for the project. Everybody's I've said yes to. The ones for Parliament, I kind of did have to cherry pick them in a way, but I didn't choose the most academically successful. What I chose was a cross section of ages. So I tried to have different ages, different stories, different parts of the country, that kind of thing. And so some of them have got, as you said, just completely normal. They went through their home ed, they went through their, their further, if they did further education, they went through further education. Some of them did go to university, some didn't, some went into lots of different jobs before they decided what they wanted to do. And I think that is what I'm trying to show, is that there's just, if you're in school, all these different...
And you're also giving them a voice, because often they kind of get lost, because once they become adults, they go into the workplace, their stories aren't really known anymore, and I think it's just really good to get their stories out there, for them to be recognized for what, how they have sort of come through, and they have made a life for themselves as adults, and are generally sustaining themselves, looking after themselves, which is surely the goal for any parent, is to have a self-sustaining child. So thanks for that, Bekkie. Now, before we move on to Chloe, I wanted to just if you could cover, maybe just stop the screen share, let's just talk a little bit about some of the things you've got coming up, where people might be able to catch the exhibition, and maybe put a challenge out there for those who would like to bring your exhibition to wherever they are.
So I've got to try and go from memory now then. So I'm the 5th to the 10th of August, I'm at Summerhill Festival of Childhood in Suffolk. On the 4th of August, I'm at Hef Festival. And on the 26th of August, I'm in North Wales at their Home Ed Summer Fair. Starting from the 25th of July, heuristic spaces, so not this heuristic out ones, one of the earlier projects that's to do with families that are home educating. That's on for the entirety of the school holidays at their bookshop in Birmingham. And then from September the 14th to October the 15th, heuristic outcomes is at the Open Eye Gallery in Liverpool. So what I'm also looking at doing is like Hef Festival and like the North Wales Home Ed Summer Fair as well, is I want to try and take the exhibitions to places like local community centres, leisure centres, local authority offices, schools, things like that, where we can kind of get the community together to come and see these images, whether it's home ed community, school community, local authority, as I say, teachers. I want to be able to bring anybody that's interested in kind of education and academics together to see these. So if anybody has any ideas of where they would like it to go and where they'd like it to travel to, then you can email me. We'll put the email on
I think one of the a really good idea would be if you're able to set up an exhibition in your local area and invite Bekkie, and then invite your MP and your councillors. I think that would be a really powerful a way to also just get some of that message across. Nothing to see here. These are just kids trying to make their way in life like anyone else. So what I'm going to do, thank you, Bekkie, so much for that and for joining us. And we're going to bring Chloe. I'm going to bring Chloe in as soon as she's got her camera on. So Chloe, welcome. It's lovely to have you here. And those who are home educators in the UK, you are fairly busy on a lot of forums, so people know you, but you yourself were home educated. So could you tell us a little bit about your background, your childhood, were you home educated your whole life, that kind of thing?
So I came out of school twice. I came out just before I turned 9 because I didn't understand what I was doing there, and my parents realized that I became normal in the holidays, and then in the term time I'd be really silent and I wouldn't eat my food and I'd chew my sleeves, and they thought, oh, this is really not healthy. She's acting like an animal in a cage. And they took me out for a year and a half. And then I went part-time to a school just at the end of year 6. They knew I was quite academically inclined. Like I'd been an early reader, and I was the kind of child who finished their worksheets early in class and then got given more and was cross about it. So they thought I needed to go back for secondary and sort of pursue a normal academic path and have the sort of specialist help that schools theoretically have. But that didn't work out, and I tried 2 different schools and hated it, and had various bullying issues and teachers being useless and the schools being useless and Ofsted being useless. And eventually I came out when I was 13 and I never went back to any institution, and I never will.
Okay, and so what sort of path did you take going, through? So from 13, kind of what direction did that take? What did it look like for you?
Well, we had quite a busy local home ed community. So because this was more than a decade ago now, so it wasn't as populous as home ed is today, but there were sort of 50 families in the area, and there was a newsletter. People put events on quite often in their own homes. So like we did geodesic dome making in my back garden with like 30 kids and loads of newspaper, and stilt making and archaeology of the Vikings. And then there were other things, some regular things like drama groups and regular social meets, things like tennis, and less up my street. And so we were quite busy with the social kind of going out and doing things, or having people over and doing things. But there was also the sort of bookwork academics, which I wasn't that invested in early on. Like when I first came out, there was a period of time where I was still quite resentful of my parents for making me go back to school, because I hadn't wanted to go to school and they'd thought it would be best for me, but it hadn't been. So it took a little while to rebuild that trust, but then my dad suggested that I try taking maths and science GCSEs just as like a practice run when I was 14. And I was like, a practice run? No, thank you. And so I just passed them first time. That was just me, a revision guide, the internet, past papers. That was, I mean, I had help from my parents when I got stuck on things, but mostly it was just me thinking things through. And then I went on to do A-levels in the same way, and my parents also said that I should really do a foreign language, and I was like, I don't like being told what to do. So I chose Latin, which wasn't really what they'd planned, and they got me a tutor for that with another girl, and that actually turned out to be a lot of fun. So I took that at the normal age at 16 alongside my A-levels in maths and physics. And then I started doing a further maths AS, and I was like, this is kind of going over the same ground and wasting my time, and then I'll just go to university after this. So I don't want to go to university, actually. University sounds too much like school. So I did the Open University, and I ended up doing a maths and statistics degree, which took me 6 years, but it was only part-time, and that meant that I didn't have student debt, and I did get to have a life in the meantime. And I didn't have to go to a university, like brick and mortar at all.
Great. And I mean, it's really sort of just taking ownership of your education, and you deciding this is what I want to do, and not allowing anyone to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, there was also the issue of English GCSE, which I was going to take, and then I discovered that they'd cut two lines out of a poem in the AQA anthology, and I pitched a bit of a fit and said that they were Philistines, and I wasn't going to take it, and they couldn't make me. So I didn't do an English GCSE. Even though I like English, I was a big bookworm as a child, but
yeah. And you're really vociferous defender of home education. You are an activist, actually, in terms of the schools bill and that kind of thing. What are some of the things that you feel? Why do you think that is? Was it about home education that just like really lit a fire in you, in terms of parents and doing making those decisions for their children? And I mean, I know I can just press play and you'll go. So.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is that children have agency, and the way I actually got out of school was by making myself ill, which I didn't admit to my parents for years afterwards. They were really concerned about me, but actually I was just determined to get out. And I think having a system that doesn't recognize that children are a whole people, quite ignorant about lots of things. Like, I'm not saying I was an adult at 13, but I knew something about my own situation and about what I wanted. And maybe they were short-sighted in some ways or wrong in some ways, but they were real and proper motivators. And I think when you get behind your child and work with their motives and go, then you can really go somewhere. Whereas if you're constantly trying to channel them into something that isn't what they want, and maybe it's just because they haven't thought about it and they don't know any different, or because they actually actively hate it, you don't get as much out of the opportunity of life, right? Of being able to do whatever things you want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where it really comes from.
Yeah, I kind of it's interesting. You just make me think of, I think if local authorities had to bear that in mind and come alongside rather than trying to say, oh, we know a better way, or this is how we'd like you to do it. If they sort of came alongside the child and what the child's motivations are, I think they'd get somewhere faster too. But that's a subject for a different conversation. So what did you end up doing then? What have you kind of done as an adult?
So I met my husband when I was 18 at a party. I went to quite a lot of parties because I had home ed friends up and down the country that I'd met from camps. And so I did quite a lot of going on trains to parties and just hanging out with my friends in between the academics. And then while he was going to university, I was working, studying, and driving up and down to him, sneaking in at the window, things like that. And then we went and had a perfectly normal life as adults. Like, he got a job straight out of university. I was tutoring. I started tutoring when I was 15 in my local home ed group, just a couple of 6-year-olds. And then I just built on that from word of mouth. I was teaching mostly maths, but also sciences and English. And once I had a Latin pupil. And I realized that was very flexible and paid well. And so I just kept doing that. I had a couple of other jobs that were trying things out. I did work experience as a lawyer. That was no fun. I thought I'd like it because I like arguing, but actually I hate lying, and so being a lawyer wouldn't work for me. And I also did some practical things, like I did sailing and butchery and archaeology. So I sort of tried out a lot of different things, but what I really wanted from life was to be able to have a family and educate my own children and give them the kind of life that I'd had. And I didn't want to get stuck in like a full-time corporate world, like going somewhere, because that's how you end up being like some people I've known who've ended up like 35, 40 going, wait, I haven't got the rest of my life together. I have all this money and no community, no family, no anything else in my life. And I knew I really wanted the balance to pursue the things I was interested in, to read about whatever subjects I wanted to and not care about qualifications. So yeah, I was tutoring. My husband was working, he was home ed as well, but then went quite a normal route through college, university, and he's a software engineer. So
Yes.
we rented with friends and we saved up, and then we bought a house and had a baby in the same week. And yeah, now I have 2 children and I'm planning on more, and they're with their grandma right now, which is why it's so quiet.
Yeah, and fully intending to home educate.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think I'd use it as an option of first resort, because I think in the cases where school's actively damaging, you don't necessarily know straight away, especially with a younger child. It's really hard for them to communicate what's happening because they don't know what you know and what you don't know about their environment, because at home you're kind of omnipotent compared to them. Whereas when they're in school, if someone's done something that feels off, as an adult, you might be able to say that. You might be able to say, oh, there was something really weird about the way so-and-so was acting. But your 5-year-old isn't going to know how to say that. And yet they can still have the kind of stresses and emotional damage that comes from that. And you don't want to wait until your child is visibly withering before you do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had a really, quite a good self-awareness at a young age. I don't even know if I would have questioned anything, at that point. I do remember feigning sickness on the odd day or two when there was something I didn't want to be at school for. But
because I'd had the earlier period of home ed. When I first came out, it was my parents asked me if I wanted to leave school, and I said yes. That was the depth that I went to. It's just like, I don't have to do this. Excellent.
And then you knew you'd had a taste of freedom.
Yeah, once I'd had a taste of it, I was like, yeah, but I can spend 1/10 as much time sitting around doing something I don't want to do. And I can do loads of more things that I do want to do, and I'm still ahead of the school kids. So why on earth would I be going there to sit with people who I don't know, I don't like, who don't like me? I got bullied for not having straightened hair. It's just absurd. And I couldn't bring myself to care, if that makes sense. I cared about being liked, but I couldn't bring myself to care about the things that I had to do to be liked.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't.
Yeah, it was about sussing the system. I think that's, I have one son who went into school for a year, and he felt like he didn't understand all those nuances that, so he felt a bit ill prepared for that experience as an older child. But, when you're a home educating parent, you don't have to, that's not what you're thinking. You're just letting your children enjoy being children. I think one of the issues is that it's not just that you're going to school for academics. There's all these other things that come into it. The cultures of different schools, the individual personalities of teachers and other students. And you don't always know, like navigating those can be extremely stressful. Because the world is not necessarily a kind and happy place to everybody. So, yeah. And I think the thing is you've done it all for positive reasons, because you knew, it's not so much fleeing the system, but actually knowing in yourself, I can actually just do so much better just by getting on with what I really want to do.
Yeah, in a way I was lucky, because I had some really unreasonable teachers early on that gave me a big distrust of authority figures who would tell me, you don't know what's for you, but they were wrong about really obvious things. Like,
yeah. I think the one of the issues people sometimes say is, but what about the gaps you're going to have? If you're home educated, and I've got news for any educator, there's always going to be gaps.
There
might not be different gaps, but they'll. Sorry, Chloe, I interrupted you there.
There are loads of things I could have learned more about, but I don't think that's any less true of school children, because if you do history in school, you do a very small section of English history, and maybe you cover 1 or 2 other major events like the Russian Revolution or something, if you happen to have it that year at GCSE. And then you sort of think you've done history, and yet there's the entire rest of the world, the entire rest of history. So you get different things. I got to do an archaeological dig off the Isle of Wight. I didn't do the whole thing, but it was digging on the seabed, and we had to brush mud away for hours in the hot sun. from these like foot cubes of seabed mud, finding out about the sort of Stone and Iron Age settlements, which may or may not have been exactly where we were digging. And that sort of thing you don't learn about at school. And I heard a lot more, most of which went in one ear and out the other because it wasn't actually relevant to my life. But that's something that if you went to school, you wouldn't have come across at all. And so that's a gap from the school perspective. Whereas, I don't know that much about the War of the Roses. I don't know school children.
Yeah, but you can go and look that up.
Yeah, anything that comes up in your real life is going to be something you can find out about. I think that's a really important thing. Your environment contains everything you need to work out how to live in it. And that's like how all species of all life forms manage, right? Their environment has everything. And barring lightning strikes or getting hit by a car or something, you work out how to live there.
Yeah. And as a last question, would you say you felt like you missed out on anything by being home educated?
No, nothing that I'd want to do. Like, I missed out on being alienated. I think I got to do so many more things that were so much more interesting. And people, I think one of the interesting things is when you're in the community, people feel a sort of responsibility for you. So people hand opportunities. So you turn up in the daytime and people are like, oh, are you having a dentist appointment? Are you off school? And you go, oh no, I'm home educated. And they sort of think, oh, I've got to educate this child now. And so they show you the back rooms of their workshops, and they'll talk to you for 20 minutes about glass blowing techniques, or whatever it is that they happen to be into. And they'll say, oh yes, come and read my paper on economics and give me some feedback. And that, I think it's hard to estimate how much of an impact that has on someone's life, but I think there's a real degree of opportunity you get being home educated that's just not there if you're at school and everyone just assumes someone else is doing it for you.
Yeah, and being spoken to as an equal in many cases, I think. You're just being addressed as a human being, a person with your own thoughts and ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Chloe. I'm going to ask Jemma to turn her camera on, and I'm going to remove that spotlight from you, and let's get Jemma on here. So I'm actually very pleased this morning to have my own daughter, Jemma. So I have 7 children. Jemma is the 5th of my children, and Jemma is now 22. Sorry, I've got to think. 22. And she's been home educated her whole life. So Jemma, I'm going to kind of ask you to do the same as what I asked Chloe, just talk a little bit about what home education looked like for you, what your experience was, just a bit of background.
Yeah, well, very similar. I was home educated till I was 16, and I don't know, it gave me the freedom to explore things that I wouldn't have had the time to do otherwise. I really enjoyed cooking and baking. I think I was quite entrepreneurial as a kid as well, and I had so much more time to put into that than I would have if I'd been at school all day. Around the age of 14 or 15, a lot of my school friends started doing just GCSEs, and I kind of had an idea that I wanted to do something entrepreneurship related. I was always running cake sales and stands and trying to make money, or trying to find a way to make, a little bit of extra pocket money for myself. So I wanted to do something that I wasn't quite sure how it was going to look, but that would put me in a position where I could maybe not succeed better, but it just made sense at the time. So I decided to do GCSEs, and I told my mom, and she paid for it. And in about the space of 3 months, I think, I had to study for my GCSEs by myself, and I used YouTube and Google and online resources, and I managed to get all the GCSEs I needed to get into the 6th form that I wanted. And then shortly before starting that, I decided I wanted to go to college instead and just study straight business. I didn't want all of the other stuff added in because there was nothing else I was interested in except studying business. And I studied there for 2 years, and that was interesting. I think I don't think they'd ever had a home educated teenager on their course before. So I think the art courses were a lot more popular amongst the home ed kids. So having me there was a little interesting for them, and it took a while for tutors to get used to me, and definitely faced a bit of, don't know what the word is, not tension, but you know, having to teach them a bit about what I'm like, and you know, I do know how to learn and I can do this, just tell me what I need to do. And if anything, I think maybe got scared about how much more independent I was than some of my—
Do you think they were stereotyping a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. I had people that would say, oh, you know, you can't do this, so you don't know how to do this properly because, you know, you haven't learned how to like learn, basically, which is kind of stupid because you're always learning all the time, so everybody knows how to learn. You don't learn how to learn anyway. But I got through that, and then I decided to take a gap year. I was very against going to university. I didn't think it was going to help me one bit. I wanted to just start a business or work for someone and get experience. But during the gap year, I changed my mind and I applied for university. I changed my mind in the space of 20 minutes. I went from not wanting to go at all, and then suddenly I did want to go.
You haven't mentioned what you did in your gap year.
I volunteered at a foster village in South Africa for 6 months. That was really, really good. It was good to take the time out and to actually think about what I wanted to do. And I'm not a very academic person, so definitely after going to college for 2 years, I was a little bit done with being in a system, and I wanted to take a break and go get some sun. Yeah, and then I came back and I started university in 2019, and it was a bit daunting because I'm not an academic person and I don't like that kind of structure. I like the learning, I love learning, but I don't like working to deadlines or what else someone else tells me that I need to work towards. And then we went into lockdown, so I spent a large chunk of my degree studying online, which made things so much worse for me. Definitely was rethinking going to university during that time, but it gave me that freedom again because I was online. I wasn't spending all day in university. I had a little bit of freedom to think about what I wanted and what I wanted to do. And I actually started a bakery business, an online bakery on Etsy in 2020. So that's been going for about 2 years now. Yeah, 2 years. And that was really fun. It was something that I was passionate about. Again, the baking and the cooking, and that me being interested in that and having that passion definitely came from being able to spend time doing it when I was younger and actually learning those skills and having those skills. It wasn't something new to me because I'd had time to do it when I was younger, and my mom would let me, or even make me, cook and bake things and learn to bake bread, and I found that really fun. And so it's quite cool that that's what I ended up doing. And it brings me up to now. I graduate later this week, which I never saw coming, and I got a first, which I think I kind of wasn't expecting. I think some of going into college knocked my confidence a bit in what I was able to do academically, and I don't learn the same way everybody else does. I think I learn a lot by doing practical things and getting stuck in, and not writing essay after essay and doing all that research. That just doesn't work with me. So I'm very proud of myself.
Yeah, you're not into all the theoretical stuff so much.
Yeah,
but it is important, I guess.
But I mean, I did manage to, I was very lucky with the course I got onto. It's a very, very small course, very practical, and they make you do a lot of things and, you know, plan businesses, give business pitches and get involved in competitions. And yeah, that really worked well for me. So yeah, now I'm here.
And I think, you know, knowing you as I do, and, you know, we focus a lot on life skills, didn't we, in your upbringing? So that you had that confidence in terms of the kitchen, and, you know, you kind of felt comfortable doing things like that. And what are some of the other things that you're involved in at the moment?
That's a good question. So in February, I started working for a charity called Feed the Hungry. It's like a social supermarket where people pay a bit for their food, only £5, and then they get about 25 or 30 pounds worth of food. And they get to choose as well. So I started working for them in February, which was difficult to balance with writing a dissertation at the same time. And I really enjoyed that. Did not see myself going into charity, but it's been a really great space for learning and actually using my learned business skills in a different way to what I would have expected to. And that's been a good challenge. And I start a new role with them. So I work 3 days a week, and then the other 2, I'm going to start doing fundraising for them and from next week. So that will be interesting. Yeah, that's what I plan to carry. That's what I'm going to carry.
And I know you're quite a social girl. You've got a lot going on generally as well. Very busy person.
Yeah. I like meeting people, so I get stuck in and involved with lots of different things. And I think that's definitely against the stereotype, because I think there is the stereotype that home educators don't socialize, they don't meet anybody. And I'm not an extrovert, but I do like meeting new people and just having those connections. And I think that definitely goes against people think.
Yeah. And do you think that home education is largely responsible for you are today? Do you think you would have chosen the same path maybe if you'd been in a school environment?
I think being at home made me way more independent and ambitious. Because I mean, even now when I'm in university, when I've been in university for too long, all day, every day for a few weeks, I don't feel like I'm as creative, or I feel like I lose a bit of that passion that I'm used to having. And I think having that freedom and that space to grow is what made me ambitious and independent, and really laid the foundation for who I am now and what I do now. And I don't think I would have been in this place had I not had that space.
Yes, and you've made most of the decisions for yourself. You haven't had other people telling you what to do.
Anyone make the decisions for me.
Yeah. Well, it's what Chloe mentioned about having agency. You've had agency to make decisions. Yeah. Yeah. So what I would actually like to do is actually invite Chloe and Bekkie just to join us just for a quick, let's get everyone back in. And if Chloe is able to turn her camera on and join us again, then I'll add her as well. There we go. So we've got all 4 of us in, hopefully. So so Bekkie, I mean, here are a couple of people. I don't think Chloe's been part of your study, has she?
Not yet, but but you're going to be in it, aren't you, Chloe? When I get to you, we tried a couple of times in the run up to Parliament. It was a crazy time, wasn't it?
Just a bit busy.
Yeah, you might be able to grab a few minutes at HEF, but knowing you, it won't be a few minutes. So yeah, so Chloe is also very involved, by the way, in running HEF, which is a Home Educating Families Festival. So she's very much part of the home educating community and promoting home education, and so you can look out for her. And of course, you've not met Jemma before, Bekkie. So yeah, Gemma's my go-getter.
We'll have to chat, Jemma.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's really great to talk about this and to hear from people here about the experiences. And there are many, many more stories, and everyone's story is different. And I think that's it's where there's no stereotype here. And certainly I think most young people I meet that have been home educated, they defy whatever stereotype society has about home educated young people, where they say, if you don't have GCSEs, you're not going to be able to get GCSEs, you're not going to be able to get a job, you're just going to be living off welfare, and all of these things that people say, you're going to be a misfit, you might grow horns and a tail, whatever, all of these stereotypes, they are not true. You can see we are here, we are pretty normal, and nothing to see here. We're just getting on with it and living our best lives, hopefully. So thank you very, very much for joining us. Feel free to contact us if you want to know more about outcomes for home educated young people. There's a few people here that can help you.